August 8th, 2016. And I'll preface it by saying this for context. Ms. Page said, not ever going to become president, right? Right?
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
Repeat that again.
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
August 15th, 2016.
I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40.
That was Republican Congressman Darrell Issa questioning anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok a couple of weeks ago during a joint House committee hearing last month. Meanwhile, newly released emails are showing that Strzok wanted to keep his security clearance and other FBI powers as he transitioned away from the FBI and to the Robert Mueller Russia investigation. Congressman Darrell Issa joins me right now to talk more about that. He is a member of the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Foreign Affairs Committees. And, Congressman, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for teeing it up with the fact that the more we know about Peter Strzok, the more we need to know more.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to ask you. I mean, I want to ask you where your investigation stands right now. But first, what about this idea that Peter Strzok did not want to give up his security clearances? A moment ago, I was talking to Congressman Peter King about this revolving door about how security clearances perpetuate top-level corruption in the United States because they're using their security clearances as their bona fides to get a new job, and then they're using that job to actually lash out at President Trump if they don't agree with him.
Well, exactly. And this isn't new. At the end of the Clinton administration, we had people showing up and putting classified documents into their clothes and walking out with one-of-a-kind documents because they still had access. This is a problem. In the case of Peter Strzok, what was interesting was he didn't just want to keep his clearance. He wanted to keep, to use a term, special powers, powers that even the Speaker of the House doesn't have, issuing national security letters, meaning doing investigations without the normal protections of a court order, and the ability to declassify documents selectively, meaning to create an environment in which you could leak something and say it isn't classified because you've declassified it. For Mueller, these were special powers that no one understood he had, and Peter brought to the fight, if you will.
So should President Trump be revoking these security clearances for those people who are no longer working in government, like a John Brennan, like Clapper?
Well, there's a principle in classified information, which is need to know. And if you're acting the way Brennan or Clapper, who lied to Congress and admitted it, if you're acting that way, you no longer have a need to know. And for that reason, they shouldn't. And I think the important thing is, if you're a former cabinet officer, you're a former high-ranking official, and you might be called, great. But that's a decision of the president or the current administration. And I think it's extremely important that this not be a guarantee, a right, but rather a privilege of those who continue to volunteer and help America in these difficult times. There are many people, former commandants and so on, who maintain their clearances, and their behavior is such that we want to have them as advisors. But there are clearly exceptions.
Congressman, your committee, the Judiciary Committee, as well as Intel and Oversight, are investigating really what happened during the 2016 election. And I want to ask you where that investigation stands. But first, listen to this. Listen to Jim Clapper, former head of the NSA, on CNN recently, basically admitting that President Obama directed these agencies. Listen to this.
And I'm alluding now to the president's criticism of President Obama for all that he did or didn't do before he left office with respect to the Russian meddling. If it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the intelligence community assessment that we did that set off a whole sequence of events which are unfolding today, notably Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that, and it was he who tasked us to do that intelligence community assessment in the first place.
Well, there you go. He just admitted it, that President Obama directed the intelligence agencies to launch these special investigations into possible collusion between Trump and Russia, of where, of course, we have no evidence of. How far up the ladder do you think it goes?
Well, it clearly goes to the top, and this is the problem we had with the last administration was There was this sort of deniability by the attorney generals and by the president. And then later on, you discover, no, they were intimately involved. And no question at all, this is an example where President Obama was hoping, in fact, to win the election and use this information against the opposing party. Hillary Clinton didn't win. They got a special prosecutor under essentially false pretenses. If we had known before what we know now, particularly about Peter Strzok and others, there would not have been a special prosecutor. People in good faith called for it based on false information created by the Obama administration.
Well, your investigation right now is looking at that?
We're also calling for you mentioned in an earlier segment, we're also calling for an investigation of Twitter and other social media that appear to be creating algorithms that are clearly biased against conservatives.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because we had House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy on recently, and he wants the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, to testify in front of Congress on these issues of shadow banning, of censorship of social media. Right. Last week, we had the chairman of Intel, Devin Nunes, on this program, and here's what he said. Listen to this.
I don't know what Twitter's up to. It sure looks to me like they're censoring people, and they ought to stop it. And we're looking at any legal remedies that we can go through.
So, Congressman, what are the legal remedies in your view? I mean, you know, if you Googled GOP in California a couple of months ago and you wanted to get the items that were important to the GOP, one of them was Nazism. That was on Google. On Twitter, they have terrible commentators talking about Melania Trump, something Kevin McCarthy lashed out at Twitter about just last week. What's your take on the legal remedies here?
Well, first of all, an example is when Google had that, they stood behind this theory that they're a utility and they're not responsible, even though they were giving legitimacy to it and knew it. So one of the challenges is these entities have special benefits, if you will, of being immune from, if you will, the normal responsibility that the rest of the media has. That could be taken away. In the case of Twitter and these others, to be honest, if they're going to politic through algorithm, they could well come under the Federal Election Commission. They could be considered to, in fact, be making an in-kind donation. They could have to register what those dollars are. For right now, what we want to do is we want to get them to admit the truth, which is it doesn't seem logical that when they come up with a new algorithm, it only seems to affect Republican conservatives such as Jim Jordan and the like. And it's the reason that both the Judiciary Committee and the Oversight Committee are trying to schedule on the first day back a hearing with Twitter to give them an opportunity to explain how this anomaly that it only seems to affect conservatives.
By the way, because when you have an algorithm, somebody programs that algorithm. These algorithms don't just come out of air.
Well, exactly. And that's one of the challenges that we face every day is people say, well, it's all being done in a dispassionate way. Well, no, it isn't. You write code, and that code will come up with something. Right. And, you know, if you give the probability one way, conservatives win. If you give it another way, liberals win. If you do it fairly, then you are looking for those Russian or other outsiders without ever affecting, for example, a member of Congress. It's not hard to write an algorithm that says no matter what you see, if it's an elected official, they should not be, in fact, withdrawn. And yet that's exactly what happened to a number of members.
Absolutely. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. We'll be watching. Thanks so much.